Welcome to A Scrap Life, a podcast solely focused on the hustlers, grinders, operators, and business owners who live and breathe the scrap metal industry every day. Here is your host, Brett Eckhart.
So, I know you did a podcast with Nick the other day, but I wanted you on here, man. I'm super excited to sit down because you and I go back, pretty far, right? I've known about you. I've known you for a long time, and the reason for that is because you used to be with Schnitzer back in the day. We were partners with Schnitzer at that point.
I know.
And now both of us have gone different directions.
Separate ways.
Yeah, and I think looking at you, talking to you, it's been good for you.
Yes.
I feel it's been good for me.
Yes.
And we wish those guys nothing but the most success.
Absolutely.
But we also wish ourselves
a lot of success.
Right? So,
yes.
Congratulations to you. And what I want to talk about is just kind of what you got cooking and what's Aldo up to today, man.
Well, thank you, Brett. Appreciate it. I am also very excited to see the evolution of your own business.
Yeah.
Parting ways with a JV partner can be can feel pretty daunting. And
Yeah.
I know you and I had a couple conversations about the future of the company back then, and things are evolved. Aldo has set up his own company, and we're in a very niche kind of boutique item that we do. We're servicing end consumers mainly from Asia, Europe, and the US. And we're really in the service, customer service business that just happens to be on scrap.
Yeah.
And we are trying to allow small, medium-sized companies in the scrap business to leverage their scrap on a global scale without having to have the means and the scale of those larger companies that can afford that. So we are a boutique service, and we can do selling, we can do hedging, we can do financing, we can do transportation. Mm-hmm. And companies don't have to use it all, but it's a la carte menu, and they can say, you know what, this component fits us, and we need it, and we can service that.
That's awesome. I remember you and I were talking the other day, earlier today, before this, and I know you probably had been hatching this business plan for a while, but you were like, do you remember that conversation that we had up on the rooftop in Chicago? There was an event up there, there was a bar, and we were sitting there talking, and you were kind of hatching your next move.
Yes.
And I love people that bet on themselves, right? I'm kind of like I was telling you, I'm kind of like a cheerleader behind the scenes, because I just find so much value in that because you found a niche you built over all these years. You built the customers, you built the relationship, you did what you said you're going to do for years, and that allowed a certain amount of trust to be carried over.
Oh yeah, and I can't remember what the year was, unfortunately, but I know it's been 5, 7, 8 years. And when we had that conversation, you mentioned a couple of things that really resonated with me. One, you said something along the lines about you got to believe in yourself, right?
Yeah.
And there's all sort of excuses that about entrepreneurs not taking this step, and really comes down to fear and not believing on themselves, okay? Yeah. And at some point you're like, man, when am I going to do this? Because you can build all sorts of excuses about it.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, if anything, you guys have opened a forum for, yes, this is hard. It's not easy being an entrepreneur.
No.
Especially in the scrap business.
Yeah.
But here's the rewarding part, right?
Yeah.
And that resonates, because I feel like it gives them a true vision of what this takes.
Yeah.
The hard stuff, the good stuff, the crappy stuff, and all of it. But that conversation, call it 7 years ago, and look at us here. We follow you online. We support you guys. We want to see you guys succeed. And just opening this table of conversation to other people like me, other people in the industry, it's great.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, we had a sign-up sheet, right? Like, we're like, hey, if you want to talk about your business, talk about what you got cooking, like look us up, because ultimately, we want to see people succeed. And whether we've talked to a few people now that work for other companies, and they're super happy in their career. Entrepreneurship isn't for everybody. And maybe your situation would be different if if some other company had came along and said, we want to pay you this much money and we don't need you to do this or that, maybe you'd be doing that. But the opportunity, you said, I got an idea, I want to try it. If there's no time like the present, and I'm gonna let it rip.
Absolutely. And listen, we all in our lives have reached out for somebody to give us a little bit of help, and that won't stop today.
Yeah.
My meeting before this conversation is with somebody who is in a transition of a job, and we're helping him literally update his resume. My staff.
Yeah.
I can't hire this person, but I want to support that process for him to find his next spot. So we're updating his resume, my staff, putting into a new template, distributing it to our network, because I know this person.
Yeah.
And he has known me, and I would love to support that process, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be entrepreneur because it's not for everyone, but happy to have a conversation how I can help, you know, and vice versa.
Because when I always said, this is why I've always been so open, is because I truly believe like the world is abundant, right? It's not, this isn't like sports where there's only one trophy and only one person wins.
Yes.
Like the cool thing about business, the cool thing about our industry, the cool thing about a lot of what we do is a lot of people can win.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
there's no a clear there's only one winner. So the more people that are winning, especially if you have the opportunity to do business with them today or in the future, then that's good for everybody. That's good for the industry.
A couple of years ago, you did one posting that I remember. You were sending a load of stainless steel to a consumer in Northern California. You and I know who that person is. And you named him.
Yeah.
You're like, this is the guy who I sell my stainless steel to, because you do business with people.
Yeah.
So here we are, right?
Yeah.
You are doing that, and you are sticking with that.
Yeah.
So who else do you see out there saying, this is the guy?
Yeah.
So you're giving this company a seal of approval that this is a relationship that I trust.
Yep.
Right?
Because I think you can spend a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of energy like talking shit and tearing somebody down or tearing a company down or saying those guys suck or this or that. But I would rather spend my time, effort, and energy saying these are the people that I've done business with and they've always treated me good.
Yeah.
Because eventually cream floats to the top, right? Like
Absolutely.
if you take care of your customers and you do what you said you were gonna do and you talk about that and you say, hey, these guys have been good to me, like why wouldn't I want that person to buy more scrap? Like why wouldn't I want them to be able to be successful? Because guess what? That just gives them more opportunity to take care of me. And they're winning.
The industry has not always been that open and forthcoming, right? And I feel like this new wave of communication tools, podcasting, interviews, social media, it gives you a platform to say, hey guys, this is who I do business with, I trust them. Let's do good together.
Yeah.
The better they do, the better you do, okay?
Absolutely.
But the industry is evolving. You guys are part of that evolution. It's something that, we were, as an industry, we were very skeptical to open our doors to communication in the past.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's changing.
Yeah.
I think that is a good thing for us because it gives us a conversation spot at the table, how important this industry is as a whole.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I heard somebody say it the other day and I loved it. They said the first one through the brick wall always gets a little bloody.
Yes.
So like people are not really ready to make the change and they're going to talk a little shit and they're like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? But it's that first person that busted the wall that kind of starts to create the wave. So like if you can create the wave and it's a positive one, then that's like that to me it doesn't get any better than that. And at the same time, we get to create all these relationships and we get to have, we get to.
Listen, we all look and cheer for the guy who took a chance on himself, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's really what it comes to. And you have to have that belief that there's going to be some trials and tribulation going through there, but at the end, it's like you can make it your own.
Yeah.
That's one of the part of the entrepreneur that I love about it. You call your own shots.
Yep.
And you own it, right?
Yep.
And yes, the first one that goes through, gonna get a little bruisey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's on there. But I gotta tell you, so many people look at it and say, man, now I feel I feel a little more confident. I see the path.
Yeah.
So I get out there, Speaking in public is not what I would normally do, but here I am sharing a conversation with you because it's like, hey man, encourage you to like, okay,
well,
I saw your
just
post
a
and let's
conversation,
book it.
Yeah,
You know, why not?
If we had a whiskey or a Coors Light, it'd be
better.
Yeah, it might flow a little easier. We could
Like,
do
no,
that.
we won't do it.
It's only 10:30 here.
It's 5 p.m. in Europe though. 9 hours ahead.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. Like we can find the spot.
In Germany, actually.
Yeah. Is that a challenge for you? I mean, trying to manage the time zone on your end, is that like probably your biggest challenge?
It's a challenge from a staffing standpoint. I have 5 people on my team, and we spread West Coast hours and East Coast hours.
Okay.
And most of my clients tend to be in Europe and Asia.
Yeah.
So it's 9 hours and 12 and a half hours ahead. But we also buy from the entire US, right? Hawaii, which is 2 hours minus West Coast, and East Coast plus 3 hours out of California.
Every time zone gets love,
just
right?
about every time zone. But it's very fascinating. I love the people. I love the relationships. From a transactional standpoint, it can be challenging waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning to have a conversation and remember what you did. But you know, it's just part of. It also gives you an idea of how global the scale is, right?
Yes.
Where you need literally plus 12 and a half hours time zone ahead of you to be able to encapsulate and transact everything that happens in this environment as well.
Well, dude, that's what I like. I love about your business. It's so far away from what my day-to-day looks like, right? In the fact that, I mean, there's a lot of similarities in the fact that you're servicing your customers. You're buying and selling, material every day. Probably not on the buy side, but more maybe on the sell side. But it's just a very it's a niche deal that plays such a crucial role in our industry.
And what I wanted to do with the company is to give leverage to the yards that don't have this global staff, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes they're trying to figure out how to grow their business, but you can't hire all these people that you need, right?
Yeah.
So we come in there and say, we can service you for that. And we can do it exclusively for you. We look after your business and we act like an extension of your commercial business.
Yeah.
Because we work exclusively for the client. We are full disclosure. We know exactly who pays us, how we transact, and we can service with those components to be able to say, oh, you don't need to have the credit against this humongous company overseas. We can take care of that for you.
Yeah.
And it opens an opportunity that most companies, they just don't get to have because they don't have this scale. Right?
Essentially, it's like I always say, it's like fractional. Like people, I was talking to somebody the other day. I had lunch with him, and he was like, "Man, I need to get a CFO, but I can't afford a full-time CFO. I don't think I'm busy enough." And I said, "Well, why don't you look at getting a fractional CFO, right?" Like, and he goes, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, it's somebody that can be your CFO for 10 hours a week."
Absolutely.
And instead of somebody hiring, this is my interpretation of what you're saying. Instead of somebody hiring a full-time guy that's out there marketing their material, they can have a fractional marketing company that markets their scrap.
Yes, exclusively for you.
Yep.
Imagine the logistics of trying to find that person with the expertise, hire that person, manage that person, deal with taxes, benefits, and all of that, okay?
Yep.
And then having to give an infrastructure, logistic, financing, banking, hedging, warehousing to that person.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing. That's why most of the large scale companies can afford that because they have the volumes.
Yeah.
Smaller companies that don't, that's the challenge. We solve that.
Yeah.
Because we can say, we can be the fractional guy. We look after your interests. Mm-hmm. We move this crap, full disclosure, this is what it goes, we get paid, we vet the consumers, we know that they're good people to do business with, because my reputation is on the line. I've known these consumers in these yards for the last 12 years. We don't take on every single client, we're very selective on what we do because we want to stand by the deal that we make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I look at it, people say, do you export scrap? And I say, yeah, but I use brokers. And they're like, why do you use a broker? Why don't you just, make the deal? And I said, here's the deal. I said, I want to know the guy I'm dealing with. I don't. He needs to make some money. He doesn't need to make a lot, but he needs to make something. And what he's doing, it's a headache tax, right?
Yeah.
Is the way I see it.
Absolutely.
Is he's taking away that headache of me trying to find the container, deal with the drayage, get it, deal with that customer, make that deal. And I feel like if I can deal with the brokerage house and they say this is the price, deliver it to this, we'll translate, everything else is done, that's worth a couple cents to me, right?
Absolutely.
And it's the same concept with what you're doing. Is
Yes.
that you're taking away that headache, or you're really kind of replacing that full-time
Yes, we are.
cost of an
Yes.
employee,
Yeah.
and allowing them to know what their margin is. Say, build it in on the buy side.
Correct. And we make it affordable because we can scale the services to what they need. So it's
Yeah.
not like, hey, you got to take all of these, right? Because hedging for some companies makes sense. For other, it doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's not an instrument that you have to get from us. You can say, manage my sales, manage the containers. I don't want the headache of having to deal with containers. We can take care of that. I have a full, 2 staff plus all these contracts with freight forwarding companies. So it's already there. So the infrastructure is already there. So to your point, yes, and we charge you a very clear fee for the service. So every single month, you know exactly where you're going to pay.
I love it. I love it. Well, anybody wants to reach out, how do they get a hold of you, Aldo?
Aldo at themetalsagency.com.
Okay.
We have a website that tells people what to do. Happy to have a conversation, and we don't charge to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And if it's not a good fit for us, we're happy to say it's not a good fit for us. We'll keep you in mind, but we can recommend somebody else as well.
You're on LinkedIn.
We're in LinkedIn.
Look him up. Man, I'm happy for you, man.
Absolutely,
You're in a good
man.
spot.
I know
like
you
where
are.
You're going.
And I really remember that. We got to figure out what year it was because it's going to drive me nuts, okay?
We'll figure it out, over a whiskey. We need to hair the dog, to get it figured out. But
I did check. I'm pretty sure it's 5 p.m. in Germany, okay? It's 9 hours ahead, so.
Exactly. All right, man, I appreciate you. I'm super happy for you.
Happy.